Welcome to PEV Lane.
The show all about PEVs. My name is Hansen.
My name is Brett, also known as E-Rider A. And today we're going to talk about the rise and fall of Boosted. How exciting.
But first, let's jump into this week.
Yes, of course we got to jump into this week. So before we get into the topic, we have a couple things we want to say. And I think the first thing is in relation to our last episode.
Yeah, so if you saw our last video, last week, we did our full review on the Kinetic Performance 1 EUC shoes. And if you stayed till the end of that episode, you may have noticed that we were giving away a pair. So that giveaway, we will announce the winner tomorrow on our Instagram at PEV Lane. So make sure you follow. And if you didn't see the last video and you haven't entered yet, now's your last chance. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and enter your email address at the link below in the description to be entered into that giveaway. We'll be giving away a pair of shoes again tomorrow on our Instagram.
Yeah, so a little early bird notice for anyone who's watching this episode. They can quickly get in the last little second of the giveaway before we announce it in the morning.
Sounds good.
Yes, and then I think we're moving right into a second piece of news, which is somewhat controversial in the EUC world. I know we're talking about e-boards today, but this is something I think you brought up to my attention as well.
Yeah, and like you said, this is an e-skate episode, but we're PV Lane, so we got to talk about everything. And this news is EUC related, but it's in regards to the Begode Master.
And the batteries.
Yeah, so initially when those wheels were kind of announced and pre-orders had begun, Begode had told everyone, retailers, individuals, that they could get the wheel in a bunch of configurations with different batteries from Samsung cells to LG to Molicel.
Which was kind of exciting for us because we're like, whoa, options.
Yeah, so it was cool. You could get your different battery options, and then along with that, there was different BMS configurations for those batteries. And the main one being Litec.
The big change, yeah.
The big change, right? So you could get Begode BMS with any of those cells or a Litec BMS with any of those cells.
Yes. Now everyone was kind of excited about this until recently when we got some news.
Yes, and I know a bunch of people who ordered the Litec version here in Canada, and they got some news, which I've heard, and it's all over the internet now, but Begode will not be offering Litec batteries anywhere.
Yeah, because apparently there was an exclusive deal between Litec and eWheels to do this, and Begode wanted in and thought they can get in, so started selling them, but then it wasn't a thing. So
yeah, and my understanding is it's simply in North America. So in North America, eWheels will be the exclusive distributor of Begode wheels with Litec BMSs, and they've already been selling those for quite a while now. So you can buy like an RS, EXN, any of the other main Gotway wheels from eWheels with the Litec BMS, and you have been able to do that for some time. And I think now what's come to light is that they have an exclusive agreement for North America, is my understanding, so Begode couldn't get that. They could have offered it elsewhere in the world, but they just chose to not offer them at all. And so they've just kind of said, okay, we're going to just ship the Master with Begode BMS. If you want that Litec BMS, eWheels is your only choice now.
Yeah, so that's news. That's news in itself. So I'm sure that's a story that's going to evolve over time, and we may be wrong in some of the things we've said. Sure. So maybe a big asterisk on that as well. And if we are wrong, we're always open. I know in the past we were wrong, and we retract the point that that one wheel had everything serialized. Yeah, and now we've learned that it's not, right? So we will take things back and retract things, and you'll see that in the comments or in the
but
description. As of now, this
no
is what we
Litec
know.
Batteries. That's what we know.
All right, are we ready to move into an episode about boosted boards?
Yeah, let's do it. Boosted is dear, close to my heart.
Is it now?
Yeah.
Do we want to just explain our relationship to boosted, and then we'll go to the beginning of boosted and how it kind of rose up, or do you want to talk about the beginning and then kind of interject when you came into the scene?
Let's go to the beginning and go chronologically and
from the beginning of boosted.
Yeah, and then we can kind of talk about maybe where we entered the scene, or where other influencers or people that we look up to or that we're familiar with have entered the scene and how they impacted it. So I'll let you kick it off.
The history of Boosted. It's a very interesting story, but it's becoming more and more common in the PEV and micromobility type of space. And there's some great videos out there, and Jimmy Chang made a great video about it. And he mentions things about venture capitalism and about how you need that investment money and then that return on investment. And it's just either, he says there's 3 ways of going out. One of them is, you're broke. You go broke. And I think, he alluded very much to the fact that that's what happened with Boosted here. And it's crazy how it happened. So they were 3 guys who were Stanford students. And they started this startup company for this in, I believe it was 2012. Which was a very long time ago. But
can we get a fact check on that?
Yeah, we're going to pull it up right now. Yeah, 2012 was founded mid-2012 using StartX, which was, I believe, part of Stanford startup programs and stuff like that.
Cool, that's kind of like Ryerson's DMZ. Or now the Toronto Metropolitan University.
Now everyone knows Boosted Boards if you're very, very OG from the beginning. Is 2014 was the date that you actually started really seeing these Boosted Boards coming out that weren't like prototypes.
So why was that? What happened in those 2 years?
They went in between, they went from there and they started a very successful Kickstarter campaign.
Okay, that's what I was going to say because I recall Kickstarter and I don't remember StartX.
Exactly. So that's where they actually started with StartX. But the thing that became very famous was they asked for $100,000 on Kickstarter and they got almost $500,000.
Okay.
So they got a lot of money to start with, right?
And that's like, what year was that? 2014? So that's 8 years ago?
A long time ago.
8 years.
Well, now we look back, it's, 8 years is a long time ago.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm thinking is it's a long time ago, and Kickstarter was like tiny back then.
It was kind of, yeah.
So that's probably, that $500K on Kickstarter was probably one of the bigger projects.
I think Kickstarter would have promoted it as well, because I remember seeing ads and stuff like that, and it was just, this was such a successful campaign.
I mean, maybe Kickstarter is way older than 8 years, and I'm just dating myself now. I don't know.
So with that came a lot of money, and that idea of venture capitalism really set them off on that track where like they got that big boost right away. So now they're going to be asking for even more money and trying to do even crazier things. They came out with the V1 and then they came out with the Dual Plus. And then eventually in 2016, they came out with the 2nd generation. And that's when things really started to go crazy because before the 2nd generation came out, Casey Neistat came onto the scene. Don't know who Casey Neistat is, very successful vlogger.
Stop watching that if you don't know who he is.
Yeah, very successful vlogger who took to Boosted Boards and became, in a way, an ambassador. I believe he was an ambassador, but never really called himself that. But a huge influence to a lot of people who ended up picking up the Boosted Board in specific.
Yeah, and I think part of it, like you said, he wasn't an ambassador, but he got tons of free boards from them.
Yeah, and he loved it so much
because he loved the board so much, and he had like 10 of them in his studio.
Yeah, so if you don't know what we're talking about, his perspective, just check out his videos. Is great. Everyone,
you got to go back to 2017 though.
Yeah, everyone who's been around here for a long time, they might gawk at, oh yes, Casey Neistat. It's like he's that well known, right, in this community. So he made a video when the V2 came out, and at that point he was fully engulfed within the boosted culture, and that really took off. But there was a little bit of an issue that came with the V2s at the very beginning. At the beginning of 2017, there was a bit of a fire issue where the CEO actually flew out to New York City to see someone's battery that had started to explode, and they managed to stop it. So he was there literally inspecting it, and there was a big crash in their kind of perspective.
The hype train.
Yeah, exactly. Right after that, that's when I came into
familiar. Anyways, continue.
That's when I came into the scene, was right after that. Little did I know, I just watched Casey Neistat videos and I knew I wanted electric skateboard and stuff to get around. So I ended up getting the V2 for the first time. And it was with the standard battery as well, which got about 10 kilometers of range, 8 kilometers of range or something like that.
That was before they came out with the Plus, was it called?
Yeah.
Or the add-on to the battery?
The extended battery.
Extended. It was the same part, like pack, but it was like slightly longer.
Yeah, so they came out with the V2, and then later on they came out with the extended battery. Or maybe it was the same time. I need to be corrected on that, maybe. But it was, they didn't have the extended battery before that, because everyone was just asking.
Well, I remember the extended batteries were like super hard to get initially or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like people wanted them, but I think they came out later. So if you had ordered one,
like
they gave you the standard one first. And then they like shipped you the extended one later on. That's what I recall.
Did you hear that? Really?
Yeah, I swear there's like a YouTuber or someone, maybe it was even Casey, and like the first one they had was like the standard, and then they got the extended, like the battery shipped to them separately.
Yeah. Well, one great thing about Boosted is, one of the reasons why they became so popular is everything is so robust, but it's also modular.
Yeah, they did a really good job at making it easier to swap out the battery pack from that, even though there was still some tools involved. It was pretty well built in like a modular sense.
Yeah, so the battery was,
you weren't worried about like a tiny cable like getting ripped or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything was very robust. Like when you screwed in that battery, there wasn't a big spark or anything like that. Like it wasn't a big capacity battery, but when you plugged it in and you screwed that tight, you had a good feeling it was good. Hard casing on there and like the nice metal plates, very good finish, and they were nicely flush for the most part. And just 6 screws to take out the battery, right? And the battery connection itself. So I think that kind of comes back to the American mentality of making things robust in a way, instead of, not to blame China for doing things in different ways, but sometimes just making it good enough. Yeah. So actually, I have it right here. If anyone's watching the video version of this, I have my original V2 deck that I bought back in the day. This is my very first start into...
So this is made by who again?
I believe...
The deck. Because the deck was not made by Boosted at that time, right?
Yeah, that's another story. This is between V2 and V3. That's exactly where we're at.
Yeah.
This is the V2, and I believe it's covered in stickers, but this was one of the ones that was... I don't want to say it was made by Loaded, because it's not.
It's not Loaded? Oh, okay.
I think this is
forgetting the name.
Boosted's first attempt at making their own bamboo deck. But I may be wrong in saying that as well, because I don't ever remember having a Loaded, or maybe they took the Loaded logo off, but still ended up using it. And they still were
like sourcing them.
Maybe that's what it was. It's been so long. I should have recalled this better.
Because these, I know for sure between V2 and V3, there was the switch from like the bamboo to like the fiberglass.
Okay, before we get into that, when did you get into the scene?
So so for me,
because I'm very interested, I want to know that now.
I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was 2017 as well.
So it was before the V3s came out.
It was before V3s for sure.
Okay, so same time.
It was around when the V2 came out, but I didn't have a V2. I started with a Meepo, which was around the same time.
Okay, so that same.
So
type
I had
of
I had the very first ever Meepo, like when Kieran, I think his name is Kieran, the creator of Meepo, created the Meepo board. It was a very popular, like became very popular very quickly because it was so cheap, and it was like one of the first like hub motor boards from China. And so I had bought that, and then I quickly grew out of it and was like, oh, Boosteds are where it's at, but they were more money, and I ended up buying one of the minis.
So that was part of the V3 series,
which it came with V3. I thought it was like in between or something.
That was part of the V3 series.
Okay. But I was like wanting one before the V3 came out. So you got following them closely. Scene. I was e-skating.
Yes.
I just didn't ride a V2 at that time.
Yeah. So around the V2s as well is when the community really started to go crazy, and that's when like this
and that's why I got into
type
it.
Of nature came about.
I was watching Casey. Yeah, I was like, I want to e-skate.
Right. You have Tom in New York City who was leading group rides at that point too, and like everyone was going nuts for these. And it doesn't matter what you were riding, you'd want to go to the boosted group rides or the boosted events. Right?
Exactly.
And then after that, and it may have been a lot of the cult following with Casey Neistat as well. Like it was just. For Boosted at this time, a lot of things were just coming together. They were coming together perfect. They were getting the investment they needed, and then they kind of had a little bit of a...
Their marketing was amazing.
Yeah.
With all the YouTubers and social.
And, shout out to Bobby, who is there. I don't want to get his title wrong, but he was like customer experience manager. Or like, I don't even know. He deserves a better title than that. And correct me what his actual title was. But Bobby's amazing. And I've met him more than once. And I live in Toronto. And he's way out in California where they were based, right? Yeah. So, like, having this great following was amazing. And then...
But sorry, just to ask you here, you obviously you're in Toronto. When you got your first Boosted, were you here or were you in New York? Because I know you were in New York for some time.
I never lived in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was always here. So I worked as a tour guide, and I'd take people from a bus here, bring them over the border, and bring them there, and then bring them all the way back here as well.
Okay.
But it was literally I did that for about 6 months, and then I got a boosted board.
Oh, okay.
So it was around that same time that I was doing it. So I ended up bringing this to New York a few times, and I begged and, trying to find out, where the crew was.
Yeah,
and, know, it'd be nice to see Casey
riding?
Neistat at one point, but you
hit up Broadway, man.
Yeah, well, my bus was always there, and I was always hanging out there, but I never went looking for him. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, I met Sam Sheffer at NYEF in 2019. Shout out Sam Sheffer. Yeah, he's pretty cool to meet. And then I also met his UPS driver who brought him all his packages. Yeah. Casey's UPS driver who brought him all his packages. Well, I guess and Sam's too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that cult following kind of became a thing, then the V3s were kind of going to be announced.
Okay.
And as the V3s were coming out, before they actually started shipping real units, they did the Summer Showdown. Remember the Summer Showdown?
You're going to have to refresh my memory.
Okay. So on the app that Boosted had, they pinned cities against one another, and it was, I think, us against Seattle and someone against somebody else, and New York against somebody else. Mm-hmm. And you got points for riding, points for showing up to the demo. So if your name went in the tablet,
I'm starting to recall this now.
There,
yeah,
right. And then in the end, whoever got the most points, that city would be awarded 3 free boards. Right, so that was part of the big announcement of the V3s.
Now I know where this is going.
You can demo the new V3 Stealth and stuff with these demos, and then if you show up, you enter your email, and that gives points to that city and stuff like that. So that was the big announcement of the V3s, and that's when you see the Stealth come into play, the Mini X come into play, the Mini S come into play, and they're starting to branch out from the traditional longboard design.
That makes sense too, because the Minis also had the fiberglass tops.
Mm-hmm.
So now what you're saying kind of makes sense with my timeline in my memory now.
Now, I'm avoiding one thing that we're going to get to in the future, and that's the Rev. We'll get there, but there's a reason why we're going to get there.
But even before the Rev, I would say, so you're talking about the V3 and all this big competition they had. So they were flying high.
Very much so.
In terms of like a company and money flowing.
So they got, what was it, $100,000, and
they had their investor Series A, Series B.
I gotta get the right numbers, but I know there was a 1 and there was a 6. That's for sure. I gotta get those exact numbers here. Maybe I'll find it some other time. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so it was a $10 million and a $60 million investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first they got the $10 million, and that was years before.
And then it blew up even more.
And 2018, December of 2018, they received the big $60 million, which everyone thought was, oh, that's it.
That's their valuation. Oh, it's a huge valuation, et cetera,
exactly. Et cetera. And that really put the number on Boosted, and that's what helped them make the V3 series, was that $60 million. Now, they were a great company. They had, before the V3 came into play, those 3 CEOs from Stanford, they started to kind of fade out of the picture, and there was a new CEO that stepped in before the V3 series came out.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew this.
Yeah, so it's either with these venture capitalism, you either sell the company.
Yeah, or they get a portion or whatnot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you either go public, you sell the company to a bigger company, or you go broke, right? So they were just keep on taking this investment. So they're delaying one of those 3 options.
Diluting their company.
Yeah. So now at this point, this new CEO takes over, hires a bunch of new people. Not only is he introducing the new Mini X, the Mini S, the new smaller boards, he's also introducing the Rev. And this Rev is in the scooter category. It's unlike any other scooters, dual motor.
It looked so cool.
And it was
I honestly think it still looks better than some of the scooters we have today.
It's impressive for what it was.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't know how the performance compares to what we have today, as I'm not that familiar with the scooters. But definitely that the Rev, when it was announced, was very impressive.
Yeah.
And I remember people being like, holy, this came out of nowhere.
Well, kind of. Yeah, we didn't expect the skateboard company.
And it was like a flagship scooter. It wasn't like, oh, here's an entry-level 9-bot max.
It was very boosted though, because like we said in the beginning of the episode, with the V1 and the V2, it's all very robust.
True. They considered how to build it in a way that was both like modular. Yeah. So
that's kind of, people kind of complain about the boosted price, but at the end of the day, that's what you're getting with that price, is a little bit more robustness.
They spent more R&D, right? They spent more money on R&D.
Well, they did it more Americanized in a way than a lot of, maybe I'd love to see a board come out of like Italy or Germany or something like that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Maybe there is, or probably is, and we need to educate ourselves, or I need to. But yeah, that became a very exciting thing with the Rev coming up, but it also came with a bit of, growing pains. That's for sure.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because there's all this hype going on. There's the competition, the summer, what was it called? Summer Showdown?
The Summer Showdown.
Yeah, and I feel like at that time, was also the beginning of the fall. in my mind. When I think about Boosted now and I look back, the announcements of all the V3 boards, the scooter, the Rev, it was hyped and it was huge because it was like, look at all this new stuff. We have the minis now. They were still riding like a really good flow and of like getting new customers and selling lots of products. But I also feel like it was the plateau, which to me is like the beginning of the end in a way, only because there was so much talk at the time that I remember of these new boards not being as quality. And you know how you're saying like boosted quality.
Okay, that's
the
another
assembly
fact
of
about
the
V3.
quality, the components and everything. V3 didn't use as high quality parts as V2 in many cases.
Now, the reason for that is because when they switched to V3, they moved all of the production entirely to China.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Rev is that it was the first product that Boosted presented that was entirely made in China.
Okay.
They were known up to that point.
So they literally just like designed it in California and were like,
well, the Kickstarter was entirely done in California.
Yeah,
the
which
V1,
can be fine, but
right? And they were used loaded decks.
yes.
Right. So
yeah, they were taking like well-known products
Mhm.
and putting parts together to make like a quality e-skate.
Yeah. Now I was kind of hounding the people at the Summer Showdown. I was there for like every event. I made them. They didn't know who I was before. So in the end, they decided I deserved one of the boards, and I decided to go with the Stealth. To this day, forever grateful.
Yes.
For them giving me that.
And the Stealth was their like top of the line. V3,
it was their faster,
right? The faster one. Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to have that, which means I also have some perspective on it too, which is really cool because that deck was
a V2 as well.
I had a V2. Yeah. So the deck was made differently. It was like a composite. It had different sections, like snowboard
Fiberglass,
almost.
Yeah,
and it had like different compartments on the outside than the inside, and it was meant to flex differently. So like there was just a lot of thought put into it. But we were all very excited for that, and it was up until the point where we were like, okay, there's going to be something new coming out, and people are like looking on the forums for a V4, like what are the new boards going to have and stuff like this, that we kind of, there was some suspicion in the air. First thing we saw was like they were being asked to bring their own lunches to work instead of being provided the lunch. So little telltale signs within the company that something was not going right after this V3 launch. And one of the reasons, which we should talk about, you know, as we get into the troublesome part of this whole story, is the trade war that went on with China and the U.S. and Trump.
That's right. That was right when Trump was elected. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely played a big role in the cost of their products, right?
Yeah.
Because they decided, oh, we're going to build everything in China now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump came in and said, anything from China, there's a tariff on.
Ironically enough, that timing could not have been any worse for them. And they said in an article early on, they said, yeah, we're just going to eat the tariff. It's going to be okay. We're going to eat the tariff.
Just eat into their profits.
Yeah.
Keep their price the same.
But they applied for an exclusion.
Oh, okay.
I believe they were granted that, but they weren't given the money.
Oh, like a rebate or something.
Mm-hmm. So then they owed retailers money, and all these retailers were kind of getting a little skeptical, and they were saying, hey, you know, we haven't been paid.
Okay.
What's going on here? So before there was a V4, everyone was kind of very excited about the V3 and what had come of it, what have come of the, you know, the minis and all. Like you could take the Mini S on a plane because it was under 100 or
watt hours or.
Yeah, or whatever it is. I don't know. I got to look that up again. There's so many things you got to remember with electricity.
I think you could remove the battery or something.
Yeah, it was removable, and it was like a laptop battery, basically.
Yeah.
Right? So it was doable. Anyway, with all of that V3 hype, it was amazing. But then the ambassadorship, they were sending those guys out to do bigger events, and they had Tony Hawk kind of on the inside, and we were all like, something's going to happen. And then things kind of got quiet in a way. And a weird announcement came out. I should get the actual date.
Yeah, get the date because I'm curious. So the V3 was 2018, right? With the Rev?
The Rev was May 15th, 2019 when they announced that.
So early 2019.
Yeah.
That includes all the V3 stuff? Or did those come separately? Probably around the same time.
I remember, well, the Summer Showdown had the V3.
Oh, I see. So maybe it was 2018.
January 2018, the extended battery was released.
Okay, so basically there was like a year.
And then April 17th, 2018, they announced the third generation, which was the 2 short boards and the 2 long boards.
What year was that?
That was in 2018, April.
Exactly. So what it sounds like is like there was almost a full year, and what you're saying aligns where
13 months.
People were waiting for that 4th gen.
Yeah, and they got a scooter.
Which
wasn't like a new generation.
Yeah,
they still called it V3.
Exactly. And then the stealth and everything just stayed in production, but then it got quiet.
Yeah. And a lot of people were they were skeptical because a lot of people were sending things back to Boosted, and they're like, how is Boosted paying for all of this? They'll take it, they'll fix it up, and they'll send it back, and I didn't pay for a thing.
That's how the warranty worked?
Yeah. Wow. And even out of warranty, I was out of warranty a couple times, and I sent it right back. Got things like my one motor just stopped working. I believe they gave me a whole new ESC when I sent it all the way across the continent.
Yep.
And they sent it all the way back.
And they covered it. Wow.
So I don't know how that sustains, but venture capitalism, you get that bigger investment. You try to do anything.
It's all about growth, yeah.
Try to do anything. Let's be that company who could just do this, right?
They were trying to take over the whole market, maintain like not a monopoly, but like own the market share, have the most market share.
Yeah, and who's not going to sign up for that?
Yeah.
Right? I have a robust product. I have a great ambassador team and people out there like Bobby and Tom in New York City, and like you just want to be out there with those people, and it's more than just a board. So then when the community just kept on going and kept on going, we were kind of waiting after the rev for something to come up. It wasn't until 2020, and it was, I believe, early March 4th 2020, which is ironic.
Yeah.
It says here, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't want to say that's true because I don't believe that's true. Boosted announced that it was laying off a significant portion of its team. It was seeking a buyer. So in that statement, I don't know if we could put it up here, maybe we won't, but in there it said it was looking for new ownership. It was seeking something under new ownership.
They wanted to sell the company, basically.
Yeah, but that was kind of like this is the you sell it or you go broke phase, because it's going public. The thing with electric skateboards and things that aren't legal, going public is a lot more complicated, and you can't just go on the New York Stock Exchange. It has to be something a little bit more mainstream that isn't illegal in a lot of places. So then people knew something was up big time. You saw Sam Sheffer put up an announcement going, I don't know what's going down. I love this company, but this is not looking good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's interesting because while the V3 was happening, the Rev came out, we talked about everything moving to China. I think at that same time, the Chinese e-skate market was booming.
See, this is the thing.
So you have like a cross where you have growth with the Chinese e-skateboards, and you have Boosted plateauing and starting to go in the opposite direction.
Now, does anyone see the irony with the Chinese e-skate market booming at the same time that they move their production to China?
Yeah.
Now, in China, can you just steal someone's idea and replicate it? And is that okay? It's a little bit more acceptable because we see it a lot, right? Yeah. So
there's less repercussions.
At the same time, it was a little bit of ironic timing with the technology that was coming around, making it very feasible and like modular. Like you could just buy parts.
They were getting good.
They were getting really good.
They were getting good, and the prices started lower.
Mm-hmm. So it was a lot more appealing, and that's one thing with the Boosted after the Rev. That was one big thing that I was doing a little bit of research last night.
Yeah.
And one thing that I learned is that they were kind of being phased out quickly, even though they had that cult following and everything was going, everything was great for so long. When that competition came in, they were like, oh, and it really set them back, and that's when you really started to see them fall off.
Yeah, I definitely argue that Boosted kind of almost helped the Chinese e-skate market come to be so successfully, because they provided this free marketing, and e-skates became so popular with Boosted that it was much easier for these companies in China to just start up out of nowhere, like Meepo, Backfire.
In Shenzhen, that's the thing.
That's what I mean. They look at what's popular, and they're like, hey, we can recreate that, but at like a fifth of the cost, with maybe slightly different components. And that's how it works, right? So Boosted was in a very difficult situation where they had to pivot, I think, but they didn't. They kept the V3. They released a scooter. They didn't really consider the market forces that were at play. And I almost feel like they were blind to the growth of like these Chinese boards, that you would start to see them more and more and more, when before all you would see is Boosted.
Yeah.
And boosted was like the go-to. Like if you wanted an e-skate, you wouldn't even look anywhere else.
Well, that was the thing too, is you see people on the street and they're like, "Oh, it's a boosted board."
Exactly.
Right?
They had that name recognition.
Exactly.
It's like you Google it.
It's like, "Oh, it's a Kleenex." It's a tissue.
Yeah.
But everyone's like, "Oh, it's a boosted board." And then when I ended up getting a board that wasn't a boosted board, they're like, "Oh, it's a boosted board." I'm like, But now in 2022, they're like, "Look, it's an electric longboard."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So now they don't really talk about boosteds as much. Like,
yep.
who watching this now is watching all the way to this point near the end and going, "I didn't know what boosted was."
There's probably someone. There's got to be someone.
Yeah, 100%. Like people who got in this during the pandemic. Yeah. The pandemic was kind of announced in March, and that's around the beginning of March is when they announced they were looking for new ownership.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't soon after that it just kind of fizzled away. You saw people leaving.
Fast.
I
don't know if you have the dates, but it happened real fast. Because what I recall at the beginning of the pandemic there, that announcement that you talked about, and then quickly boards that they were selling just were out of stock.
Oh yeah,
they were still around, but it was like you go on their website, there was no stock of anything.
Yeah, so when they made that announcement, you go on their website, that's what you saw. Right then, out of stock. Everything was out of stock.
Okay,
so that's what really tipped people off, because they read that announcement. They're like, "Oh, I'll go check the website."
Still stock,
and they were like, right? Yeah. So
later the boards like instantly were gone.
Yeah,
or like they weren't gone, but they weren't selling them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So later on, there was a company that came out called Boosted USA,
started reselling all the
and inventory. They had all the extra stock that was left over, and they ended up selling, or still do sell, a lot of the boosted stuff. But it was just out of stock, and people who had bought the Rev and bought the thing, they're like, "I'd ordered this a long time ago. Does that mean I'm still going to get my stuff?" Like
the Rev's like an antique now. It's probably more valuable now.
And I've seen a couple recently, and I'm like, "Oh wow!"
I have not seen one in Toronto.
It's like when you see the 9-bot unicycle.
Oh yeah,
right.
The Z10
or the Segway unicycle or whatever it was.
No,
right?
9-bot.
Z10. Yeah. It's like, that thing's robust. That thing's a thing.
It looks so cool.
But the funny thing is right after this, what really tipped it off for everyone in the community was when legitimate companies started buying boosted. So it was a month after they announced in April 2020 that we heard that Lime Scooters bought boosted. And then after that, there's a discussion of the IP and all these things. Who owns the rights for this and that? Is anything going to happen with boosted? Is
China.
Lime going to... Exactly. Is Lime going to continue to make these boards, And at that point, you have players in the game like X-Way, right? And X-Way, I believe, comes...
They're from China, right?
Right? And they make a very similar type board and started making some innovations with the Flex.
And what about Evolve?
Evolve was in the game with boosted at the beginning, and they're still one of the biggest, if not the biggest name out there.
Yes.
Right? So... Then people were kind of questioning, is boosted going to have a future? We come to find out now, at the end of all of this, that it literally just dissolved into nothing, because I believe somebody else bought out Lime. I don't know if I have it here.
You're right. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because I don't remember Lime buying it.
Uber bought out Lime is what I have in my head, but I don't see that here. I'm looking at a Wikipedia page for boosted. Okay. All right. I watched a lot of other stuff, but this has got a good spread of information for a timeline. So.
Yeah. But you're right. Like, basically, the company dissolved.
Yeah, and we were all like,
no IP, no branding, no products anywhere.
Yeah, and that's when everyone went, right? And then there was like pictures that came out of a V4 lineup they were working on, and that had like LEDs and stuff in it, and we didn't know if that was true or just like a rendering. Yeah. There was also rumor that I think turned out to be true, because we hear it come out of Bobby's mouth, that they were working with Tony Hawk, working on a Birdhouse version of a boosted board, which is like full circle, right? Like the skateboard legend doing an electric skateboard. That'd be really cool. And they also had another guy who was using the shortboard. I forget his name. Oh, I should probably have his name somewhere. He was in like I want to get it right. It was like a skate park, but in a bowl.
Oh, okay.
Like
with
concrete.
Electric?
Yeah, with electric. Cool. And he was riding around and can do like big jumps and stuff like that. So it was really cool. So yeah, we were all kind of excited, and then it kind of fizzled out, and now we see some boosteds around, and they're usually just people. They're not serious riders.
For a few years,
right? Because
ride occasionally.
Yeah, because they don't have the larger battery. The biggest battery they ended up making was the extended battery that went at 18, 20 kilometers.
Like 20 kilometers, yeah.
Right. So I think they had like a 12S10 or 12S 2P and a 12S 1P. Like it seems like you got 10 and 20 kilometers.
Yeah.
But they went fast. The Stealth went a little bit faster than the V2, but you're still capped at like a high 20 something kilometers. it's good for what it was. Or no, 30, sorry, 30. High 30 something, because with the stealth you can get up to 40 42 downhill or something like that. So it was impressive, because anything close to 50 on an e-skate, in my opinion, is somewhat sketchy. That's the line.
Especially here.
Yeah, and
like
roads
if you're on our roads,
if you got a wide bump at 50.
Yeah. If you're like in some mountain roads in Europe somewhere and you're like cruising down like where the longboarders go, nice pavement, then that's perfect. But here, not so much.
Yeah, so I think that's one great thing about the Boosted, because even when they came out with the Stealth, it wasn't hitting that 50 barrier. So I think a lot of riders didn't really realize what that 45 plus into 50 feels like, and how that's a real big change. Because when you end up racing and stuff like that, and you get into a long stretch on a back and you get close to 50 kilometers, you're like, oh, because I don't dare go over 50 in traffic now, because you get a random wobble that can come out. Like, even an experienced rider could be riding at 50 and just, if it's unpredictable on the street,
like angle change,
like you really got to know the road, and it's got to be smooth at that point, right? I mean, you can do it if you're extremely experienced.
Yeah, just push through it, and
you're working for it.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
At that point, it is like going on an EUC on a single track that's a double black diamond that you're gonna pedal clip on. You're sweating to figure it out. But it's
just tighten those trucks up. Is that the way?
Yeah. Well, speaking of trucks, the one difference between Boosted and companies like Evolve that we still see today, Evolve makes great boards. Evolve is known for making double kingpin trucks that go on theirs, and this is a Boosted truck.
Yep.
This is the latest version, their V3, which their first V3s were kind of bad, and then their second round of V3 trucks were a lot stronger and robust.
Did they have the ones that broke? Was that the V3s? Yeah.
And that may have been the V2s, but the beginning of the V3s, I think, were the ones that were really, really breaking. And then they came out with a robust one, which you could tell between the thickness by the wheel.
Much thicker,
Right? And like you could tell, I rode this for a while. Like I chewed them up. But they never went with double kingpin. It was always single, and it was like a somewhat mid-range. It wasn't really like a long board, but it was a longish board.
But yeah, that makes sense. You didn't really need double kingpin for those speeds, do you? Or what would you say the advantage or disadvantages here?
I think the one thing that Boosted boards had was that they never had a stiff deck. They never had a deck that was
always very flexy.
Flat. Yeah.
I've seen those Casey videos where he like jumps on it and touches the ground.
And at that point, when you're watching people go around in Boosted, it's 2017, 2018, you see someone coming around with an Evolve, and you have a Boosted rider try to go on it, and they go to jump
like
on
carbon.
It. Yeah,
and
they're
like rock hard.
They have no idea that like other boards exist. You know, all they know is Boosted board, and they go to jump on an Evolve, and they jump on it, and it's literally flat. They're like, whoa.
I know people always love that about Boosted because it gave you like suspension in a sense. Not really, but they would argue that like the flex would allow bumps to be less harsh.
The mobility is nice.
Yeah,
I get that, and I kind of said that for a bit as well, because having a stiff deck is a specific type of feeling.
Yes, but now that's what you've ridden mostly.
But when you're only
like your race ones at ERL, they're all stiff.
Exactly. But when you're only doing like 30, 35 at most, or a little bit more than that, you're cruising at like 25, 30. It's kind of nice to have a flexi deck just to kind of have fun with, right?
Yeah.
But when you have a board that's capable of doing that 40 plus,
you want it to be more like
a little bit more rigidity for that. Because like, imagine you hit even the slightest little bump, you get a little bit of flex, but you have a little bit of toe pressure on your board.
Yeah.
That truck could slightly turn and then want to bring itself back. And if you can't control it when it brings itself back, that's when a wobble starts. That's where it begins, right? Because you can catch something, and maybe even, you know, if you catch it coming back, it could slide your whole back end out on one little swivel. And if you can't catch that to power slide it to bring it back underneath you, it's just going to wobble out. And that's when you see people,
Insert video of you at URL last year.
Oh, maybe we should. Because I came up, and same thing. I was doing about 40 going into 45, and there was like a track that swivels switchbacks, and I was going straight across it.
Yeah.
And when I hit one of those switchbacks, there was a bit of a dip, and it went in, and it went to come back, but it was such a big dip, and
instant wobble.
I hadn't started racing. You know, I started racing for maybe.
Yeah, it was like at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it was the first night out, so I had only raced a few weeks instead of like a few months. And man, by the end of that season, I could have taken that line and been able to make it after that season, because I became such a better rider. We did ERL in Toronto, Electric Racing League, where we just every Wednesday night we went out and raced, and it was so much fun.
All PEVs.
E-skate, but e-skate is so much fun. Yeah. So much fun to race around that track. But if only Boosted boards were around today, and who knows what they would have made. really, because they were going into the scooter space. The diehard longboard people may have enticed them to make something. Like they were working with Tony Hawk.
I'm curious today, if you're still listening at this point in the episode, what's your favorite e-skate now? There's so many brands out there now.
That's a fair question.
I don't really know what I would say even, right? Like Boosted was so good and they were just so unanimously known across the globe.
Yeah.
That like today it's very different. So I'm curious. Yeah, let us know what your favorite e-skate is. If you're an e-skate rider, if you're not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So for me, like, I love the Boosted board, but if there's three, I'm going to name three of my most favorite high-end boards, like wish list boards. It's the three you're probably thinking about: Cali, LaCroix, or Trampa.
Yeah, I knew all three of those.
Oh,
we'll see if anyone else mentions those as well. Yeah,
or big gal boards, whatever you like, or big X boards. Welcome to 2022. Yeah, so those, you know, what they're producing now for e-skate is quite exciting. And you still see other boards come out, like the budget brand, the Boosted style. Like people are calling it the Boosted style. So the Boosted name's kind of still staying around.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, just that flat deck with the enclosure for the battery and the enclosure for the ESC under it. And you still see X-Way making boards just like that. Very successful company. And, you know, they're doing quite well. And I know the X-Way Canada guy lives actually right around the corner from the PV Lane set. Yeah, so I think it's a history that was worth telling. Yes, so we're proving our name as PV Lane. Very happy to do an e-skate episode. And don't forget we're going to be doing a giveaway for Kinetic DL shoes, and we're going to see that on our Instagram in the morning. The winner for our giveaway for the shoes.
Yeah, so if you haven't entered, you still have a chance. Get in that, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, comment anything you'd like below, any suggestions and comments, and we'll be happy to reply to them down there.
Until next time,
we'll catch you on PV Lane.
Peace.
Back on the couch. And my name is Brett, also known as E-Rider Today. E-Rider Today? No! I messed that up.
It's today, man.
Oh, fuck. We gotta do that again now.